Hi, everybody. This is Gavin and Kyle. We started something a couple of weeks ago. It's an uncle and a nephew that genuinely just enjoy talking about things. We started something for fun called Menerally Speaking Generations. Ultimately, we don't know where this is going to go, but Gavin, the nephew in this thing, is one of the most extraordinarily talented people I've ever met, and I enjoy having time to talk to him. And so one of the things we're trying to do is spend a time once a week just chatting about various things going on in life and talking about how the different generations deal with that. One of the things that Gavin and I think eventually, if this ever came to be anything, that we could add other people of other generations, perhaps male or female, but ultimately just an idea to talk about some things that are going on in the world. So if you've never listened before, maybe this will be your first time. We'll get started and get going. How are you, Gavin?
I'm doing well. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Awesome. It's been a great weekend. I flew in from, I was in Kansas this morning, and I'm back in Chicago today. I was down with two of my kids. Watched one of my kids in her last year in college break her arm, which was not fun, sliding into second base. So we'll see if she can get back on the field before the end of the year. That would be great if she could.
Did you run out onto the field when you saw that happen and go, "My baby! My baby, no! My Rachel!"
No, didn't, but I was thinking that might be something I should do, but no, I didn't. But did get a call from the trainer to come into the training room, and she was withering in pain, and so we took her to the hospital and got X-rays, and turns out that was broken, but we'll see. She sat and watched her team play yesterday, and they won 2 games, and today they went 1-1. They're off to a good start at Emporia State, but yeah. How was and your weekend was good, Gav?
Yep. It was good. Miss my little cousin though.
Yeah. Oh, Garrett?
Yeah, he's a little.
Yeah. Yeah, he was with me this weekend, and he was great as always. We had a couple of beers and we had a lot of laughs, and I really think he should shave soon, if that would help him, because and this is speaking of somebody that probably needs a shave himself for me.
Same.
So anyway, this is the first thing I wanted to talk about, Gavin. It's so in the news and it's so interesting. Did your parents read, or did you read Dr. Seuss books when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, I did.
So what do you make of this whole ordeal of 6 Dr. Seuss books literally being it's kind of like, I'll say something, it just kind of taken away, just poof, obliterated, because there is now some thoughts that some of the things, some of the topics included in the books are racist or against certain nationalities.
Give me an example?
You've not heard of this, Gav?
I heard of it, but I don't know why. I just heard that people were freaking out.
There are some thoughts, and you can look at this at anything, Gavin, and we can speak about this relative to Dr. Seuss or to a show like All in the Family or other things that you just can't find anymore. But there is a book about an Asian kid that is at a zoo, and there are just some things that are looked upon as perhaps being negative towards that particular nationality, and you certainly being Asian, maybe you have a feeling for that, and I should have prepared you for a discussion on it. But ultimately, I guess the big picture is this: what are your thoughts on literature that has been put out, or creative things that have been put out, that because of today's way of thinking are looked to be eliminated or erased because they might offend somebody?
I don't think we should ever erase history at all, because in order to see how far you've come, you got to see where you were at. So if they're claiming it was racist, then I feel like they should leave it out just to show the world that this is when this was published and look how far we've come. In their eyes, I feel like that would be the mentality, but no, pulling it off the shelves is just kind of a stupid idea, especially when there's like things that are current, like the Land of Lakes girl and the Kansas City Chiefs, or not the Kansas City Chiefs, the Washington Redskins, like stuff like that. Then I get it because it's still current and people are still using those things. But the Dr. Seuss books have been out for so long, and they're not being promoted anymore. It's just like a book from history, you know? And I feel like getting rid of history is horrible, especially a children's book that was very prevalent in a lot of people's days.
I don't know if this is true, Kevin. You said something, though, about they're not being promoted. They are. This is what I heard. Don't know if it's true or not. But Dr. Seuss, whatever Dr. Seuss's heirs in the family, they are, of all the... this is what I heard. I haven't verified this, but of all the folks that have died, Dr. Seuss makes his estate makes the second most money of any dead person for their family. Michael Jackson is number one. Michael Jackson makes so much money, and it's millions. I don't know if it's hundreds of millions, but it's at least 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars a year. Dr. Seuss in that area. I thought Elvis Presley would probably be in there too, but what I heard this week was that Dr. Seuss, for the family, and I want to say it's like $30 million a year just to the family. So this is relevant. I know that for even my granddaughter, their other set of grandparents bought them Dr. Seuss books and couldn't find a nicer family than them. It is not, we've all read these books to our kids that have them, or we've had them read to us. The thought, I kind of tend to agree with you. I suppose you could find something wrong in most everything we read in the intent, because at the time when it was written, things were different and words were used. And things were said that just would not ever be said in today's world. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
So, what? Talk a little bit more about it, if you will, about the getting rid of history. Why is it important for the younger generation to be able to read about that stuff in your mind?
Well, I think personally that Dr. Seuss taught a bunch of a lot of good lessons in all of their books. I'm pretty sure each book had a different kind of lesson to it, or some similar ones, but there was always a lesson at the end of it, and I feel like you could still take something away from that. I feel like if there's people that could be offended because of the race of the person and how they were portrayed, I don't feel like it I would like to see an example of it to where it's so overwhelmingly racist that it can't be put in there. But if the dude's Asian and they made him look overtly Asian, Dr. Seuss also draws just like different creatures from wherever the hell his imagination was at that current time. So he over-exaggerates things. And again, it was something in the past, and I feel like if it was made today, it probably wouldn't be made in the same art style. But I think that you can get away with slapping a label on it that says some people may find some of this content offensive. Just be discretion is advised, or something like that. They don't have to pull them off of the shelves, because you're essentially, just erasing history, right?
That's interesting.
Right from the shelf.
All right, I'll jump into something else, because I find this so interesting. And no matter what your political stance is, and I don't know, Gavin, that you watch a lot of news, but one of the things, I have a journalism degree, a broadcast journalism degree, and I'm almost offended watching news these days. Because if you watch it, whether it be Fox or CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else, you can almost tell the belief of the person asking the question based on how they ask the question. And it's something like this. If you're on Fox, they may draw a comparison between somebody that might have elicited some bad mojo relative to going and protesting somewhere at a Trump thing, instead of just asking the question without any opinions. And it just seems to me that there are just very few journalists out there that ever even take the time to just care about what the truth is without raising their eyebrows, because it's not our job as journalists to tip the scales on the question. It's okay if they say something wrong. For instance, if somebody says the sky is purple, there's nothing wrong with saying, well, I don't recall seeing the sky purple. Can you tell me where you saw that and how that might have been? Instead of just making these overtly political discussions to say, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was listening to an interview today that was somebody that was more of the liberal standpoint, maybe, but they were interviewing the New Jersey governor of the New Jersey governor about some of the stuff that's going on with these COVID deaths relative to Cuomo. And I don't know what Cuomo's situation has anything to do with the New Jersey governor's thing. Just because they're both Democrats, it doesn't matter. There's no reason to ask the question with Cuomo in the background, because what Cuomo's done wrong or right in New York relative to how he treats women, employees, or how he treated the COVID thing with these senior citizen homes has no relevance really to the New Jersey governor. There's nothing wrong with asking the questions, but why the woman that was asking the questions had to relate it to the New York governor when speaking to the New Jersey governor didn't seem relevant to me.
Because all people who are in the mainstream media, I would say, are part of a maybe conglomerate of people who all value the same political beliefs, and they're trying to push that agenda because they feel like, I don't know, maybe they have politicians funding them, that's just what they believe and they want to push their opinion on people. But I think that both the left and the right are guilty of attacking the other side and making them, all the people who support them, just seem stupid. And at the end of the day, I believe that anybody who watches mainstream media is going to get a skewed opinion, but there are independent reporters that you can find on the web if you look them up for independent, views and stuff, just unbiased news. And if I was going to watch news, that would be the only thing that I watched, because any news corporation is going to be skewed in some way or the other, to the left or to the right, and they're going to push that political agenda.
I hope you're wrong about that. I interned for CNN back in 1990, and I really felt there was a Republican. H.W. Bush was in office then, and I really felt there was was real journalism going on, and just asking questions and holding both parties accountable just based on what was right or wrong, regardless of what the party affiliation is. So I hope that you're wrong, that can come back. I do agree with you about one thing, though. Maybe it's the reality is there's not a lot of thoughtful people that are thinking for themselves. There's a lot of people that sit in front of the TV, whether be it MSNBC or CNN or Fox, and just soak up the stuff and are told what to think. That's why this whole discussion of gerrymandering is so interesting to me. And gerrymandering, as you know, Gavin, is this idea of kind of drawing the lines for what the voting precincts are going to be. So you can literally draw the lines, if done politically right, in a state that is 51% one party and 49% the other, and turn it into what will likely be 60% of that one party getting ownership and getting representation more in the House of Representatives than the other, just based on how they draw the lines. Yeah. And it's a joke. It really is a joke, and the Supreme Court was afraid to take it up, and it's because we just know that there's just not very many people that know how to think for themselves. They're told what to think, and they sit in front of a Hannity or a Maddow and are told what to think, and it's kind of funny to me. Anything else on that subject?
I personally don't believe that we should. If you are going to form a political opinion, it should not be based on the news channel you watched. I believe that you got to do your own research for all of the topics that you want covered and look at what side views what, and that should be the way you form your opinion. I believe when news coverage is covering politics, it should be just coverage of politics, because giving their opinion just seems to be the biggest problem with all these media sources.
I want to ask you something, and I'm going to go out of order because I had one other topic I wanted to do before this one, but it leads right into this. First of all, what did you do with your background? You got some cool lighting going on in your little studio thing there. What did you do?
So this basically lights up to my voice, if you can't tell.
Ah.
Ah! Ah!
And what are you going to do with that?
Let's just use it for streaming. Basically, when I get really mad, you could tell because the lights will be on, you know?
When I get really mad, my start yelling and not making sense. Oh, but then that might be the way I normally am. I'm not sure. Anyway,
way.
Yeah, you asked a question. You started to say something that I thought was kind of interesting about political opinion. This is just more your thought. I was thinking about this today. What is the one thing, and I'll answer it too after I give the question to you. What is the one thing you won't compromise on? Meaning, no matter what happens, what is the one thing that you won't compromise on? You could lose your job because of it. You could lose your whatever.
Stance on pedophilia.
What's that?
Your stance on pedophilia. If you believe that there is a justification in a sexuality for pedophilia, I believe justifying a disease and calling it a kink is the wrong thing to do, and people like that should be rehabilitated, and if they can't be rehabilitated, I think they should spend the rest of their life behind bars because they're a menace to society.
Wow, it's not where I thought you would go with this. So there's not a lot of people. No mainstream people are pro pedophilia.
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of Hollywood. A lot of Hollywood.
Mainstream.
Patton Oswalt, a big actor from the early 2000s. You know who Patton is, right?
No.
Patton Oswalt. He was in a couple of comedies. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a pedophile. He admits to it, and he says that it should not be illegal. It should not be illegal, and it should be treated as a sexuality and not as a crime.
But this is not mainstream. I was talking about. There's nobody mainstream that would ever support that. I mean, that's why.
I can do a quick Google search and I could find people that have done suspicious things, like with kids, and maybe have voiced their opinion on the matter. I don't know, but I do know that an actor and comedian, Patton Oswalt, says that he supports it and that he is one. And I think that a lot of Hollywood is facing scrutiny because of it, so they're not talking about it. But I believe that there's a lot of people who have so much power that they can go to another country and just start doing whatever the shit that they want. And that's money.
Well, I didn't expect it to go there. I will tell you that for me, I think you're almost kind. I would think that castration would be a good way of dealing with people like that, but that I will leave that one to.
No, I believe that. I was trying to dumb it down a little bit too because I didn't want to make myself seem crazy. But yeah, I think that they should. Whatever happens to them in prison, they deserve. That's all I have to say. Because chances are, 9 times out of 10, they get theirs if they get caught.
All right. Well, I was going to say the one thing that I won't compromise on was just my kids, because and what it means to this. I was more thinking about this, so maybe I asked a poor question, or maybe that's really what you thought. I got to thinking that one thing that's really wrong with politicians these days is they just vote, kind of like what we just talked about. They just vote whatever their party does. For a few exceptions, the big thing about Cheney kind of voting against her party, against Trump, blah, blah, blah. But mostly people do not have any political courage. They just vote because they want to get reelected. And they don't really care. But what is the one thing that would make you stand up and say, I'm willing to lose my job for it. I'm willing to lose whatever for it. and I got to thinking about this again, just because for me, it's just, you don't fuck with my kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is, it's an easy answer, obviously, but I wonder if the different generations have changed their stance on what they would just not back off for. Not they wouldn't, the most important thing in their lives, the one thing that they just will not compromise on. Yours is standing up for the rights of the people that can't defend themselves. Clearly, that's
Kids.
what you're talking about. Yeah, but it's an interesting topic. Anything else on that, Gav?
No, I think.
Let me ask one last thing, last topic, and I don't know if anybody's out there they're watching or whatever, but I always have fun doing this with you. Is this communication is so different now? Maybe you're going to fall more into my line, but I don't think so. I still prefer to jump on the phone than to message people back and forth. And give me an idea about a day in the life of someone in, at least speaking for your generation, what is your preferred way to communicate with people? What do you like to do? How does that look for you?
Well, it depends. If it's just casual talk, then you can keep it over text message. But if it's something significant, I like to call people so that way we can have a discussion about it. Because having to type things, people can misconstrue it. Didn't put a period in the right place, didn't put a comma in the right place, and they read it wrong, and something goes nasty. Also, it just takes longer at the end of the day to type it all out when you could just call somebody.
As a millennial, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about how you communicate with your dad or your sister or your mom, how do you communicate with them? How often do you talk to them on the phone?
A couple times a week.
Really? So even your sister you talk to a couple times a week?
No, not my sister, but mainly my mom and my dad. My sister I talk to occasionally.
I think that's awesome. And with your sister, it's less often talking and mostly just texts or other things like that. Is that right?
No, I guess she's just busy with school, and so I don't really. Whenever she calls me or texts me, I reply, but I only reach out to her if it's like something to do with mom and dad or.
Gotcha.
Yes.
But it's neat. I think it's neat that you talk to your parents a couple times a week. My way of communicating, I probably talked to my son Garrett, who was with you last week. I probably talked to him 20 times a week on the phone. Mm-hmm. But we'll talk for a very short time. But he and I both love sports, and we'll just, if he's out walking or I'm out walking, we call each other and give each other crap. And my Ryan, my other son, who's a father, I probably talk to him once a week or twice a week, and we usually do it FaceTime so I can see him. And Rachel and I are texting, talking, FaceTiming. We do it all. But I just find it so interesting. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I just find it so interesting about the whole communication thing. So with your friends, how often do you get on the phone and talk with a friend?
Pretty often. We game together, so.
Oh, so you talk while you're doing something else?
Yeah.
And do you have conversations about life, or is it mostly just about the game?
Anything, whatever pops into your head at the time, anything's open for discussion.
And do you have buds that you talked with throughout the country? Or is it mostly back to California friends?
Mostly back to California friends, but I do know a lot of people in different states.
It's interesting. That is the beauty of technology. As you know, we have some tapes. Back when we first moved to California, it was so expensive to call people that literally you would send cassette tapes. We would send cassette tapes back and forth because it was just so damned expensive to communicate. Now it's just so cheap,
mm-hmm.
relatively. It's amazing what technology does.
Yeah.
Gav, what else are you thinking about this week? We've been on for about 30 minutes. What else are you thinking about for the week?
What is when? Okay. Do you think that at the beginning of this, the whole pandemic, do you think it truly would have been over if everyone quarantined for 2 weeks?
No. Well, I guess technically, no. I will still stick with no, because you can never control people coming from outside the country in those areas. Do I think it could have been handled better? Yes. Do I think that Donald Trump, because he is such a polarizing person, is blamed too much for how bad it went? Yeah, I do, because I don't think that. Look, I just flew. I saw how many people are out and about. I saw how many people are
still
not necessarily wearing masks. I mean, everybody on the airplane's wearing a mask. Everybody. That's just common courtesy. But it is, I think, way too much of a misnomer. When anybody blames this on one person, Trump, they did a tremendous job of getting in a very aggressive manner to get. There's now 3 companies out there that are out giving immunizations, which is pretty freaking amazing as quickly as they've done this, because in the past these things typically take 3 or 4 years. Now, does Trump get credit for that? No. I mean, it's just like a quarterback at a football game. Quarterbacks get way too much credit for a win and way too much blame for a loss. Mm-hmm. And because Trump is just such a polarizing figure, he's going to get ridiculed. I mean, CNN's ratings are way down. I would imagine all the other ratings. I watch CNN, so I can only say that their ratings are way down because nobody's watching, because there's not anything exciting to watch. What do you think they talk about half the time? They still want to talk about Trump, because that's what got them the ratings. And everybody wants to talk about how bad things are. The proof of the pudding is this, Gav, and I'm going beyond your question, I know a little bit, but when President Biden came into office, he originally said his goal would be essentially 1 million immunizations a day. That was already being hit and more. And as more folks come on the board, and as more, it was going to get bigger regardless of who won as president. And we give way too much credit to the incoming president, if that's who we like as a president, and way too, like, for instance, Trump came in and things were good, and then the Democrats wanted to say, well, it was because of Obama, and the Trump people know it's because of Trump, and neither of them are right. I mean, it was there are some things that were already happening good, that were already happening.
And a lot of people forget about Congress and Senate and stuff like that. I don't know. The president makes all the decisions.
I think that we have changed our world, though. Our judicial and our legislative branches have become very small compared to our executive branches. But when you think of the legislature, we talked about this already. They're more concerned with getting elected, not in being courageous and making changes. And there's a handful of Democrats and a handful of Republicans that do the opposite and actually do it. But in answer to your question, no, I think it would be too simplified to say it would have ended, because then other countries would have gotten it canceled. And with the exception of Australia, I don't know that any other country has really just kind of really killed it. There's been some that have done way better, way better than ours. But that's the price you pay when you have kind of freedom like we have. Mm-hmm. And, we have freedom in the United States that makes it so things like this will happen. And regardless, and we all put masks on for the first 2 weeks, we'd be in better shape. Yeah. Would it still be around? Yeah, and I think it would have been. I mean, I don't think that we could have.
Because you can't control every individual person.
Well, you made a system where you said everybody did. So for 2 weeks, you said we did have complete control.
Well, not in other countries is what I mean.
Right. And but it would have been better. It would have been better, I think. But those first 2 weeks, people were afraid. There were less people doing things. Look, I had just moved to Chicago, kind of in that area by myself, and I had to go off and do something. I didn't even have furniture. I had to go out and get stuff just to be able to have a place to sit.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever. It's a good discussion. What do you think about it, Gav?
About
the first 2 weeks. Do you think it could have rid the country of this?
No, because like you said, there's people that are coming from other places and stuff like that. And I don't think even in a perfect world, I think the pandemic would have found a way to get over here eventually.
Yeah.
It would have spread too big. I mean, if we put the entire country on lockdown and had enacted martial law and people weren't allowed to leave their house and were brought rations and all travel from other countries was halted for 2 weeks and everyone was forced to quarantine, yeah, probably. But the public outrage, if something like that happened, the government wouldn't do that unless the country was in danger.
Yeah, it's so interesting and it's so sad. It does seem like, though, that better days are ahead for us. And if travel has any indication, there were tons of people traveling, but traveling respectfully with masks and doing it the right way. And, not a lot of conversation between people on the planes, too, because that can aid to it. You kind of just sit in your seat and you keep to yourself and you keep your mask on and you listen to your music and then get off the plane. So anyway, anything else, Bud, before we hang it up for the week?
Not this week.
All right, Bud. I hope you have a good week. I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Love you, Uncle Kyle. You have a great week and stay safe out there.
You too, Bud. I love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. You all have a